I think it's
Is it
on.
is it
Oh
going?
my God, Jack!
Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm
I think
good.
we're
How are
live. It's
you?
on the phone.
It's on the phone.
Good,
Yeah,
good. I'm
I
like
think
seven.
these sessions. I tried to log on from my laptop, but apparently it only accepts it through the phone. So I hope you can see me and hear me just as fine.
Okay, I don't know. I don't want to play. I had everything set up on the computer, ready to go. Proving it now. Jack, to kind of ask questions.
Uh, I am not the savior. I'm just yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, I think you might have a little bit of a lag time with. Can you hear me fine? Yeah, let me know if there's a problem with hearing me and so. Yeah, I hear you. I think it might be. Are you connected with your phone? Are you connected through Wi-Fi? What's your connection? Okay. Okay. Yeah, your connection's a little bit on the choppy side, so it's kind of in and out. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I think I'm in the Wi-Fi of the school now, so hopefully that's
Okay.
better
That
and
sounds
easier.
better.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're back. Okay, well, I'm sorry again for the terrible start off to this live stream, but Jack, thank.
Um, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's complicated, to kind of try to put it into succinct, you know, clips, and figure out how to communicate in a way that's effective and useful. And this is just a little bit the conundrum that we face as teachers, even as singers, but especially as teachers, is trying to communicate concepts. And we evolve, I think, as teachers too. And if we're not learning, um, in the process of teaching, that's a very big problem, because you have differences from one student to the other, and you have to adapt. You have to learn how to communicate concepts based on their needs. So you have to have very strong discernment to understand where the person is coming from, and have a little bit of a, almost like an empathy, a physical empathy, to feel what they're going through, to kind of trace the pathway from A to Z, and all the intermediate steps that need to happen, sometimes counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if I'm working with somebody that doesn't know anything about the tilt of the larynx, and so they're going up very open and kind of chesty and spread, how do I get them to tilt? Often I have to have them make noises that are not the type of noises that you want
Yeah.
uh, as an end product, but as an intermediate step to just figure out what the posture of the larynx might be. They might be necessary steps. And so it's always a little bit frustrating for the singer to go through the acquisition of the foundational skills, right? Because they are so independent, and we're always trying to make the sound, and don't really always understand that the sound is actually made up of smaller parts, and becoming masterful with the small parts is what gives you the real end product. That's not how the brain wants to calculate how to sing.
Mhm.
We want to have a very clear intention right away, and that's not how you build it. It takes time to develop the individual parts, you know. So from my point of view, there are a few things that I like to impress on the mind, and one is the importance of the intention. Right? What is your intentionality? There's a certain map that you have to create in terms of what the voice feels like in your body. You have a sense of monitoring, like almost like a homeostatic kind of way of monitoring the internal environment of your body. What does it feel like? What does the voice feel like when it's vibrating inside you? What does it feel like when your diaphragm is engaged with the lower abs? What does it feel like when your ribs expand? The breath is suspending. The breath is kind of interacting with the vocal folds. What does it feel like when the chords are opposing that breath? There's so many things that we need to like learn to discern, and it takes time. It's not something that you can like figure out overnight. I know that's hard to kind of hear, but that's the truth. I mean, a lot in the old times, people would do vocalies for like 2, 3 years before even looking at a piece of music, right?
Right.
Now, if you go to a college and you're an undergrad, you have to prepare for juries, and
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the world? For me, a jury would be, that's the jury. That should be the jury for the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
year. But they have to prepare songs and all this stuff. And I understand that there's a need to incorporate music in all this. But you do have to first acquire the foundational skills in order to then actually be able to sing in a way that is healthy and appropriate and so forth, and not build habits and so forth. So there are different ways at arriving at the end product, but you want to be able to build a solid intention, a map of what the voice feels like in your body when it's correct, and an intention of what it sounds like to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you build also an intention of emotion and link to the text and so forth. That comes after. First has to be the clear map of what the voice feels like and sounds like internally,
Mhm.
and that's something that you can hang on to, the sense of the voice, even in a different acoustic space. You have a way of monitoring internally the workings of the voice, and the longer you do that, the more impressed that is on your mind. And so then you end up, once that map is very strong, you can step back and almost observe the voice happening. So then you start expressing the character in a way that you don't you don't think technically. at that point. You step back and you allow this character to emerge, and your emotions, you really imbue them into the character in a way that you couldn't do before, because if you're thinking too technically, right? So we have to get past that. The thousands and thousands of hours of study have to happen in the studio. And then when you get on stage, you have to be able to rely on the conditioning that you've gone through and not think about it, right? You have to have a clear enough blueprint in your mind to be able to execute the technical stuff without focusing on that too much. Yeah. It takes time. It's huge sacrifice. Huge sacrifice. People don't realize it. I mean, the biggest ally for a singer is frustration. If you're not frustrated, you're not progressing,
Yeah.
because you have to be faced with the limitations that your voice is encountering, and you have to hit against that wall so much until you break through. That's going to be incredibly frustrating for the mind. But guess what? To change the blueprint in the mind of what the voice should do, you have to go against your instinct often so much. It's going to feel so frustrating that the brain is going to be, I'm holding on, and then I'm okay, I give up. You win. And then it lets you get through the obstacle. But that takes like really a long time of trying to get to the sound and dealing with the frustration of it.
Yeah.
99% of that is done on your own. And that's, as a voice teacher, I'm really careful, because I think that the singer is the voice teacher, because 99% of the work is done by the singer. We're like air traffic control, 30 degrees to the right, 20 degrees to the left. But that's like a course correction. I give you kind of an instruction, but then you have to figure out how that applies in your body. I will say, oh, that's not quite right. Go a little bit further to the right or to the left, right? But that's the stuff that then you have to figure out inside your own body. So really, we're guides.
Yeah.
You're the teacher for your own body. And that's the truth. You know, a lot of times, you get to New York and people are, I go to this teacher. Oh, and the teacher's like, wow, my student is this singer at the Met. Oh, my student is this guy in Vienna. Well, guess what? That student had like 10 teachers before you. And
Right.
so who's the real teacher here? Probably the reality is none of the 10. It's the singer.
Yeah.
They pick up information and they kind of develop. I'm a helper. I'm a servant of the singer. It's not the other way around. I'm not the head of a cult. I am somebody that's trying to guide people along a path that's really difficult and that they need to figure out. It's going to take a lot of sacrifice. So I need to be super patient, because I know that they're not going to be patient because they're full of frustration. So I have to help them simmer down and say, okay, take it a step at a time. You will figure this out. Just give it time and don't give up. Keep making the sacrifice. Keep paying the price in terms of frustration and you know what I'm talking about. It's
Oh yeah.
not something that emerges overnight. You have to put an amazing sacrifice in your mind and your body to make this puzzle fall into place,
Yeah.
right? And so it takes a lot out of your life, and that's just the price that you have to pay, you know. That's it.
100%. You said, oh my God, you touched on so many amazing points that it's almost hard to kind of break it down. But pretty much, you talked a lot about sensation. I think feelings and sensation, and really, I'm a big ambassador for experimenting with the voice in the right way.
Right.
Being able to be your own voice teacher in a way that your body will tell you what feels right and what feels wrong most of the time. And as
That's right.
voice can't put your hand inside and move all the parts you need to move to make the sound work. The student itself needs to be intelligent and passionate and ambitious enough, and like you mentioned, a bit neurotic, because there is a level of craziness that is involved in singing that you need. It needs to take place because, guys, what Jack is saying, and I know that you guys are writing questions, by the way. Keep writing questions because we're gonna get to them. I want to get into the nitty gritty stuff, if that's okay with you, Jack.
Yeah.
But it needs a certain amount of obsession, unfortunately, because for me, understanding the tenor voice is hitting extremes of the voice, kind of hitting walls, kind of hitting dead ends until you kind of start to understand what actually
Right.
works.
Exactly.
Singing completely open. And being okay. What does that feel? It doesn't feel great. Okay. What about if I start going more into the yawn? Okay. Now I'm really, really, really dark.
Right.
And starting to find a certain balance to the path
But
of the.
this is difficult because see what you're talking about is a composite sound,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
What we need to try to figure out is what all those sounds are made of, right? So you talked about the more open and
Mhm.
then the more
Yeah.
yawn,
Right.
right? That's a different functions
Mhm.
that are happening laryngally,
Yeah.
right? If you're trying to control what your larynx is doing, good luck. The only way to really control these things is to figure out what the sounds are, right? Unless you're kind of like holding, you can monitor the larynx and like go like this and kind of figure out how to
All right.
relax it into a low place, and then typically what will happen is you won't get any sound. You'll go and
Mhm.
you'll right
Yeah.
because you don't know how to phonate in that position.
Right.
And then you figure out how to make noises in that position, and then the voice kind of emerges over time in this new physical posture.
Yeah.
But that's because the brain maps out the composite sound. If
Mhm.
I'm used to singing, for example, when I first started, I would do like something like "A te o cara mortado," very
Mhm.
high larynx, right? And I remember going to Corelli in New York, and he was telling me, like, your larynx is too high and stuff like that. And I said, well, how do I lower my larynx? Because when I lower my larynx, this is what happens. Right?
Well,
And I would get this kind of kind of sound.
yeah.
And his answer was, no, you just don't know what the sound is when your larynx is down.
Right.
You're trying to make the same sound with the lower larynx,
Right.
which is impossible because the sound that you make is a high larynx sound. So if you try to lower the larynx while making a high larynx sound, your
Right.
brain is trying to calculate how to bring your larynx back
I,
up to make the right sound,
right.
right? And another part of your brain is trying to calculate how to lower the larynx, but independent of
Yeah.
the sound.
Mhm.
That's not how it works. Like to lower your larynx, to change your tongue, to change your soft palate, all these things correspond to sounds.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a clear image of what that sound is, you have a problem.
Mhm.
This is our problem because at the beginning of the studies, we have no idea what we should sound like. So we don't know how to create these postures. That's why you have to be led into making certain noises, not singing,
Mhm.
making noises that correspond to certain functions or certain
Yeah.
positions. And then we discover those and we try to, like tilting, that's a specific foundational skill, right?
Mhm.
Closing your chords, that's a specific foundational skill.
Like,
These kinds of things you
oh,
then
it's
add the skills together.
yeah.
You don't just like I tilt and that's it,
Yeah.
right? So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna sing always like it's not gonna work.
All right. Right.
The sound is gonna be all back, the chords are loose and stuff. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like breaking down all the layers that make up the sound, break them down individually, chord closure, the yawn, the pastillo, the all sorts of the little layers that you need
Yeah,
to then make up the sound. Sometimes it's about, and it's funny because when you do that, you start to create sounds that are kind of funky and funny and
that's
cartoony,
right.
which is funny enough, that is actually the right path. And
That's right.
finding my voice was all about making the weirdest sounds in the world because I was taking it one layer at a time and figuring out, okay, if I do this, larynx is high position, but what if I do my core closure? Okay, what about flexibility? Tongue tension. All about these layers of figuring out how to release tension while creating a sound that is literally just a layer, a component of what will make eventually the full sound. But
That's so smart. That's so smart. That's why you're finding success
and I
because you
didn't
do
have
that.
you, Jack.
Because you do that.
This is now. I'm going to take this moment. We're going to get to the questions now, but I want to take this moment, Jack. All right. We haven't really met. I mean, I actually did reach out once, and we had like a little session which we literally sit down and talked. It was kind of my first Rigoletto, and I was just like, what are you and Salvatore talking about in this video? But I want to say, Jack, there was a moment in my young artist days in which I was ready to quit singing. I was pulled in 20 different directions. And I told to myself, I will never again relinquish control over my voice to a voice teacher, to somebody else, and lose my instincts, lose my thought process. And that took me into a route of teaching, exploring and research and understanding the voice in a whole other way that in a way was very obsessive, was very neurotic, listening to the old school era tenors and understanding what are they doing, pausing an F, pausing an F sharp, pausing in G, then going to somebody else, pausing there. Why are they doing that? It took me down a route, and your videos were a great tool. Everything that you said really resonated with what I was feeling. And so I want to just first of all say thank you. And I know I'm not the only one. There are probably thousands of singers who have tuned into your videos, all your work that you have done with Salvatore, the webinars. Oh my God. If you guys go to Masters of Opera, go to Masters of Opera, watch the webinars. I think there's like a little payment, a little charge that you have to pay. It's so worth it. My God, just go and watch these videos. I'm actually doing Madame Butterfly here right now. And funny enough, you know what I literally watched yesterday, which I hadn't watched in a while, was your video with Salvatore back, where you guys were doing all these scales, and then you guys started doing
Right.
the Vogliatemi Bene duet. And I had watched that video so many times. It's incredible how even as singers that we do this all the time, we start to slowly forget certain things. And a
Yeah.
lot of this advice to you about the positioning, the impostazione di la voce. He's every video that I see him teach, he's always like ah oh no
That's right.
and I was like, you know what? I think I am starting to go a little bit maybe I should go I did it. I was trying it today. Took me back
Right.
to track.
So
It's
this
unbelievable.
is this is this is looks the same for me, and
Yeah.
for every singer,
Yeah.
right? We need course corrections, right?
Mhm.
The point here, from a technical point of view, is not confusing physical position with sound, right?
Yeah.
Your larynx can tilt, it can go down. That's a physical posture. It's not a sound.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get to that position by making some noises. For example, if I'm teaching somebody how to tilt, I'll tell them, don't worry about resonance and don't worry about volume. Just do this. When they do that, like from example, from A flat to F, then I'll tell them, okay, what you're feeling, that's a deliberate thing that you just did. You weren't worrying about resonance, you weren't worrying about volume, you're just worrying about tilting and doing this yawn, right? Create that map in your mind. What does that feel like? Now, try to apply that while making a resonant sound. A lot of times they'll go, as soon as they try, right? As soon as they try to
That-
make a resonance, they will go back to
yeah.
an untilted position. So then I'll say, no, try again, tilt, and try to get to a chord closure. Try to get to an epiglottic lowering to get more ring, right? In
Mhm.
that position, not outside. So that's a discovery. That's learning how to phonate in a specific physical posture. It's not intuitive. Nobody speaks in yawn, right? Nobody speaks in yawn. Nobody
Unnatural.
speaks with epiglottic lowering unless you're Gilbert Godfrey and you're kind of talking like this, right?
Yeah.
Then you have that kind of natural epiglottic lowering. But most people don't have those functions in their normal speaking voice. So it's not intuitive to go there. So you have to guide them into discovering the physical posture. And then within that context of physical posture, how do I close my chords? How do I lower my epiglottis? How do I keep my palate high? How do I keep my tongue flexibly away from the larynx? All those things have to come into play while not abandoning the physical posture. That's easier said than done, right? Because it means figuring out a whole different map of where my body needs to be while making noise. That takes a lot of sacrifice and focus. It takes a lot of focus. Initially, it might take somebody guiding you, but you've got to get past that. You've got to be able to do this on your own. So you have to understand the process. The process, you get to the physical posture, and then you try to make the noise. So if I'm learning how to tilt or how to lower my larynx, I need to monitor, right? This is a big thing. People think they know what's going on in their throat. And so they'll do this. Ah. And right away, before they even make a noise, they'll take their hand away and the larynx will go right up. Right? Why? Because the subconscious mind does not want you to know that your larynx went up because it's frustrating. So they'll take away their hand so that they can't tell. Or they'll look in the mirror. Your tongue is kind of depressing. Look at it in the mirror and they'll go, ah, and they'll turn their face right in the moment that they begin to sing. Why? Because if you look and it goes bad, you're going to be frustrated. Well, guess what? If you're not frustrated, you'll never change.
Well, that's actually that's a great point, because I like to tell, when you're in a voice lesson or when you're practicing the voice, you should be working and focusing on the weaknesses, the things that you know you need to work on. If you go to a voice lesson and you're trying to sound good or impress the teacher, you're that's not the point. You know,
That's a
the
waste of time.
to show to someone, this is where I'm stuck. This is what I need to work on. Like, and most of the sessions that I do, we rarely ever make a pretty sound. It's all ugly, sounds, in order to find, like we said, breaking down the layers of the sound,
That's right.
and tackling the weakness. So in order, if, for example, if your larynx does go up, then let's focus on that. Okay, we need to be vulnerable in a certain way as singers, to share with someone that, hey, I have an issue and that I need to work on. This is
Right.
my, and just be honest about it. There's no shame in saying, that I have a problem with my larynx, I have a problem with my tongue, I have a problem with this. Tackle those issues,
Yeah.
and be a smart singer. That's a
Yeah.
smart.
Look, there has to be, I'm not to my horn, but the teacher needs to hear the problems. If the
Diagnose.
teacher does not hear the problems, that's a problem for you as a singer. You might want to get a new teacher, because if the singer cannot hear your problem, that's their job, is to hear the problem and to give you a roadmap from A to B to C to D to know how to fix that problem, right?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, you need to hear the problem.
Mhm.
So you as a singer, or as a teacher, you need to discern. If
Yeah.
you cannot hear the problem, you cannot fix the problem. So, as voice teachers, we need to help the singers hear the problem. Most of the time, they just think, that's my voice. Well, guess what? It's not your voice. It's your voice in consequence of the problem.
Mhm.
And so if you might think, oh, my voice is teoka, or I might get a soprano that in the C5 F5 range is singing without any tilt, and she sounds like a soubrette,
Mhm.
right? And I'm like, you're not a soubrette. Why are you singing Despina? You should
Right.
be singing Liu, but you're not tilting between C and
Yeah.
F, and so now all of a sudden you sound like you should be singing Despina,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing with tenors and with baritones and with all voice types. I worked with a baritone a little while ago, a magnificent 19-year-old kid who was not tilting between A flat and E flat. And so he sounded like a tenor. He said, I'm not sure if I'm a tenor. No. And he's speaking. He's like, he's speaking like this. I'm like, you're definitely not a tenor.
The speaking voice will give out.
What is going on? Right. But when he sang, he was like, ah. So it was very chiaro. It sounded like a tenor because he was not tilting at all. Right. So you have to discover with people what their actual sound should be like. Help them feel that, help them hear it, and then they can practice it on their own. And they need to practice it on their own.
And it's important to wait. Well, now we're gonna get to the questions now. By the way, sorry guys, but it's just a very interesting conversation, and it's nice to have Jack on here on board. But it's also very interesting because a lot of people nowadays, coming from someone who's actually doing it right now, a lot of casting, a lot of people in even major opera houses can't really tell the difference. So if you go, as for example, is this soprano presents herself as a soubrette, they will cast soubrette. There were many points where I was trying to figure out my color of the voice, where I was singing everything open, and then a teacher told me to kind of go the other extreme, and then I was singing everything very dark and a little bit ingolato, vowels very muddy, and people were like, well, you're a dramatic tenor, and I'm like, well, it doesn't feel that way, but I was too young to know. And the question
is, as if a dramatic tenor has a voice in their throat.
Right, exactly. Right.
It's not.
And so, and it's good to figure these stuff out now, because others will not figure it out for you. If anything, they'll push you down the wrong path. But let's get to these questions. We're going to start out with, we'll see what we can answer and what we can't, because again, some of these, it's a little sometimes difficult to answer questions without hearing the specific voice. But let's just start with the first one. He says, what are the biggest steps to technique? Meaning, for example, being able to do mezzas di voce.
Mezza di voce, yeah. Well, first of all, mezza di voce is a very advanced technique.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So first you need to know how to phonate before you can think of the crescendo diminuendo. You have to figure out how to phonate, how to keep on the chord closure. This is complicated stuff, right? So the question is, what are the steps?
He says, the question is, what are the biggest steps in technique, which is kind of broad. There's quite a lot of steps in technique. The second one is, for example, being able to do mezza di voce.
Mezza di voce, yeah. So I think number one, the king of all principles is chord closure. Without chord closure, you're not going to make it as an opera singer, period. Right? So this is really complicated because I hear people saying things in my studio as they come to me. I mean, I get people from Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music. They come and they have a voice lesson with me because they're having trouble. And what I hear almost always from them is they're telling me that I need to move the air, because if I move the air, the vocal cords will get sucked together in like the Bernoulli effect, right?
Which, I did say that, but that's not what I meant. Which, by the way, if anyone is still confused about that, that does not apply to the voice. Please understand that. The moving air for the vocal cords to.
Well, no. Hold on. It's not wrong. It's not wrong. But there's a little caveat that needs to be there, right? I studied physics before going into opera, and the Bernoulli effect requires, in this case, a closure.
Mm-hmm.
And then the air pressure opens the cord, and then the air moving through will give an impetus for the closure to happen again.
Yeah.
But the underlying factor is that the cord was already sealed.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure opened it, and then the energy of sealing was still there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is the point. When you say to a singer, move the air, the brain will say to the larynx, abduct.
Mm-hmm.
The muscles that loosen the cords and open them to let air are triggered by your intention to move air. Right? So you have now contrasting messages. You have the message to phonate, which is a message to close, and a message to move air, which is a message to open. This is all wrong. Yeah? Non si canta col fiato, si canta sul fiato.
Right.
You need to sing on the breath, not with the breath.
That would
So
produce fluttery sound, in effect, pretty much, right?
yeah,
A
yeah.
breath.
It weakens the voice
Yeah.
to think of moving the air. And so what ends up happening is the singer never develops that strength in the tone
Mhm.
that's necessary to actually then eventually learn how to sing dynamics.
Mhm.
Right? The way that your chords oppose the breath, the appoggio, that has to be rock solid. You have to build a very strong coordination between energy of the breath and chords opposing in order to find the right tonicity in the sound,
Mhm.
to keep the sound very organized, very harmonic, very clean, uh, ringing in the right way, all these things. If your air is moving too fast, it'll break this resonance. If it's moving too slow, your chords will squeeze. So you have to have just the right amount of air.
Mhm.
That means that you have to follow the sound. The sound triggers the support, not the other way around. You have to be in the support, but then the sound has to inform the body. If instead you are intending to move the air, I see master classes with people online, actually not many, just one in particular, where they're talking about moving air and spinning, and I'm
Yeah.
like hitting my head. I'm like, yeah, my
Mm.
you want to hear great master classes? Listen to Renee Fleming. There's not one thing that woman says that is wrong. I swear to you.
Right.
It is just absolute rock solid
Yeah.
vocal principles
Yeah.
all the time, right?
You're right.
Cantare sul fiato. This is like essential. You cannot get to the right messa di voce if you are not efficient, right? Because piano has slightly less adduction, but it's not airy.
Right.
Forte has more adduction and it's definitely not airy.
Mhm.
But in the transition between one and the other, your guiding factor is the resonance. If it's ever the air, meaning like you're going, ah, this is
Yeah.
wrong.
Right.
This is
Right.
not, it's not going to carry. Air does not travel, only sound
Yeah.
travels. And a piano needs to travel to the back of the house,
Yeah.
right? You need it, you
Yeah.
need to have volume even in a piano. And you
Yeah.
can't get it unless you have efficient chord closure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what sort of exercises would you, for example, suggest? Because one thing that I already see problematic from people trying to start. Okay, he mentioned Jack said chord closure. All right, all right, uh, 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 and so now we're like, okay, hold on, because a lot of things that we mention here, guys, is subtle. Okay, there's a lot of subtlety to what we say. The problem is that it's such a, again, we're going back to sensation, such a sensational thing that you need to experience the correct sound so that you
Right.
can differentiate the incorrect sound.
Yeah.
Jack's talking about chord closure. However, he's not talking about slamming your chords together
No.
in an abrasive way. So Jack, do you mind if you have any exercises that perhaps people could be able to introduce these idea of chord closure in a way that they can maintain singing sul fiato
Yeah.
without it
Yeah.
becoming breathy and without it becoming tight, because we don't
Right.
want that either. Yeah.
No. No. Yeah. Chord closure has to be intended as not violent. Even like my maestro Fiziele, he'll talk to you about, like, the first time I brought a group to him. He's like, everybody, forget all your vocalies. You just have to go and he does that a lot. He's
Yeah. Yeah.
he does this like throughout the lessons all the time. Is he trying to get you to be plosive with the breath and the chords? No, absolutely not. What he's trying to get you to is the correct attack, right?
Yeah.
Which is on the breath and it's with chord closure. So you need to have that subtle moment right before the attack where, like in the Italian language, you go, ah, ah. It's not, ah,
Oh yeah.
like, let me put air and then close on the air. No, that's
Mm.
not how to do it, an attack. Breath and then close. That's an invitation to loosen the chords. So
Mhm.
you'll never really have a theatrical sound. You might have a voce da camera. You might be able to do tosti in front of
Yeah.
20 people, but you're
Right.
not going to go up against a 100-piece orchestra in a 3,000-seat house
Yeah.
and be able to sing. If you're going, ha, it's not
Mhm.
going to happen,
Right.
right? So the coordination of it is just right at the onset to think like an Italian would think. Eh, come va? Bene, grazie. This is not heavy glottal. It's uttering.
Uttering.
It's
Yeah.
almost saying the vowel. Ah, okay, va bene. If
Mhm.
you put air in Italian speech and you go, come va? Immediately, foreigner. Why?
I love
Because
that.
there's no air on
Right.
Italian consonants. There's no. They
Yeah.
can't even say an H. They're
Right.
like, ha. They can't even do that.
Yeah.
They'll go,
Yeah.
ha. How are you? How are you? Because they can't get themselves to go, how are you? Because
Right.
they don't know how to put air
Yeah.
on vowels, and so they'll go, how are you? Right?
Yeah.
Like my relatives in Brooklyn. Just to say, the attack of the sound is important. The clarity. It doesn't have to be forte. So you can develop chord closure even with piano. You
Mhm.
just start clear, netto, very on the breath. Ah,
Mhm.
ah, ah. You tilt. Ah. It's never
Yeah.
ah, eh, e, oh. It's always on
The
the
breath.
clarity of the sound. Yeah.
You know, one of
And
your
so, and then
oh,
one more thing I would say, proceed from strength. That's my motto. If you have certain notes that ring more, use them. Use
mhm.
them to condition the parts that don't work, right? So if I have a strong note, and the lower one is then I have to go I have to
Yes. Yes.
condition,
I
right?
love the
You
uh,
proceed from strength. If you're getting the right coordination and strength on a specific note, it's because there are functions that are naturally happening on that note. So you need to inform the other notes based
mhm.
on the functions that are happening on the one that works well, right? This
So
teacher, this is where also the teacher needs to adapt their system. Yes, we do scales because the scales are like sacred ways of doing things, right? Because
right.
they're right, because they work,
Yeah.
right? But then part of the lessons also have to be getting something that works and using it to inform the parts of the voice that don't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might do that in repertoire, you might do it in scales. But you have to figure out the things that really work and identify them for
Mhm.
the singer. Say,
Mhm.
that, what is that sound? How are you doing that? Right? That question there, that's something I ask all the time. How are you doing that? Because
Mhm.
I want the singer to think how they're doing it. Because a lot of times they don't even ask themselves that question. How am I doing that? They'll
Yeah.
just do it.
Right.
But you have to like think, how did I do that? Well, I got that sound, but wait, how? What did I feel in that
Mhm.
moment? And so it's important during a lesson to identify when things are right. I give an impetus and I try to give an emotional response. I'll like, what? How did you do that?
Mhm.
Right? Why? Because I want to get the singer's attention to kind of get their brain alive to kind of
Yeah.
memorize,
Right.
because that will help them memorize how how they did what they did, so
Mhm.
that when they're on their own in their studio, it's easier for them to recall what they
Yes.
did, you know, or if they listen to their recording, they'll be able to, if they have a clear emotional memory of what that moment was, when they hear it, they'll be able to recall better, right?
Yeah.
These are little like almost psychological tactics that I use
Yeah.
to try to get people to remember the sound and the feeling associated to the sound,
I
right?
love
The internal feeling, the monitoring of the body, yeah, is
mhm.
important. I don't say that while I'm doing it. I just say, what was
Right.
that? You know,
Yeah.
but
I
that's the intention behind my question, right?
yeah. I like to call these I call them points of reference for me because most of the time, even if we're just starting out, it's possible that we can, out of all the notes, maybe one we get right. And it's like, That one's right. Now, if you forget, as you continue, if you forget what the right sound is like, go back to that. That's your reference. That's your point of reference.
Right.
Go back to that sound. And I love your suggestions because it's very much using a singer's strength to work their weaknesses. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's about using. I love that exercise of sliding down from a note that is properly phonated to help the mind and the body, the coordination and understanding if this is proper, then let me see without changing anything if I can fix the other ones as well. You know, if I'm
Exactly. Exactly.
and using the resonant sound, the one that's correct to fix the other ones as we're sliding down.
Exactly. I remember as like a 19-year-old, my easiest note was a high D, but my B flat, my A natural, my A flat
Yeah.
were like air. It's like nothing there at all.
No.
One time, I was listening to this recording of Mario Lanza singing Mare Chiara, and at the end, he's like, "Ah, shit, no, what was it? He's like, Mare Chiara, ci stavano right?
Yeah.
And something clicked in my mind, and I could do that.
Yeah.
And that was the only high note that I could do in
Yeah.
that on that note.
Yeah.
And so whenever I sang, as I was doing keys on, in my head, I was saying, keys on, just
That's
well,
fantastic, though.
it
That's a point of
worked. It worked. I somehow psychologically the map of that one phrase, I was able to transfer it into other phrases, and then they worked.
yeah.
So this helps me, it informs me as a teacher that there are certain mental images and intentionalities that work for a singer, and you have to use them.
Yeah.
Right. So and as singers, when you're practicing on your own, use the stuff that works and then apply it into another piece. If
Mhm.
you have a great note on an aria, sing that aria's note in other arias. In
Right.
your mind, sing that note. Don't sing the aria's note. Sing the
Right.
one that works
Yeah.
in your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have a correct mental image,
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
correct intention for that note. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. All right, let's continue on because I know that we gotta try to go as fast as we can with this. Okay, next question. How should I approach controlling my larynx? I imagine this is talking about up and down, rising and lowering. This is something I have always understood and seen people do, but have never known where to start.
Right.
I begin covering at around an E natural. Okay.
Okay. Look, your larynx, it doesn't just exist in your neck. It's attached to something. What is it attached to? It's attached to your trachea,
Mhm.
right? So if you touch right here, like right at the clavicle, right? In the jugular notch right there, and you press in there, you'll feel your trachea. When you breathe in, you should feel that tube go down if you breathe in energetically. So if that tube goes down, guess what? So does the larynx because the larynx is attached to it. If you try to lower the larynx without lowering the trachea, how are you going to do that? You'd have to have some kind of force from above to try to push the whole tracheal tube down with the larynx.
Mhm.
That's not the way to do it. That's not the tradition. The tradition is that the strength of your inhale creates the descending tracheal tube. It's, in fact, scientifically, it's called tracheal pull because it's a pull between sternum and trachea, right? They're
Mhm.
muscles that actually tug down. And that happens at the beginning of a yawn. It happens when you breathe in energetically. If you go underwater and you're swimming and then you come out of the water, your larynx will go down. It's the best position to renew the air in your lungs,
Mhm.
right? And so that is the the correct way to lower the larynx. The problem with that is that when you do that, the brain thinks you're yawning. And so it does not want to adduct the cords, it wants to abduct them
Mhm.
because the yawn is meant to replenish the air.
Mhm. Oh.
It wants to go there. It doesn't want to go,
Right.
right? So somehow you have to work against eons of selection, right? That the
Right.
made the larynx evolve the way that it did, and you have to get to this deeper breath
Mhm.
and close the cords.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Right. Which is a contradictory idea. The brain doesn't have
Totally.
the
It's
same.
like they seem to be
Right.
mutually exclusive ideas, but they're not.
It has
You
to
just
build
have
the.
to figure out how it's done. And so the easiest way to do that is to go for the physical posture and
Mhm.
then learn how to phonate in that posture. It's not automatic. You have
Mhm.
to learn. If you're used to singing with the high larynx, your brain has a map of what you sound like. And so what you sound like is a high larynx singer.
Right.
So if your brain projects that high larynx sound, and that's what the mind is trying to achieve when you open your mouth to sing, your larynx will go up no matter what you do. It
Mhm.
will go up because it has to in order to make that sound.
Mhm.
So you have to forget your sound and go on a vocal quest to discover. So you
Mhm.
monitor your larynx and then you start making noises. Uh, 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 If the larynx goes up, you have to try again.
Mhm.
You have to monitor and then you can prolong. Uh, 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 and you
Right.
begin, you do that on different pitches, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
harder to do that in the passaggio because then you have to tilt as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So do it in a medium area,
Yeah.
like for a tenor, maybe a C or C sharp or a D or an
Mhm.
A natural below,
Yeah.
right? Uh, 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 So you're basically sustaining the glottal.
Mhm.
If you're a little baby glottal attack, see, this is so gentle. And then
Yeah.
if I prolong that, I prolong the action of the glottal to sustain the breath,
Mhm.
right? And then you learn how to phonate. So
Yeah.
it's a step at a time. Once you get it right, you begin to feel certain resonances. That's what you need to latch onto. The
Yeah.
position and then the resonance of the phonation.
Mhm.
And those two things will help you to really figure out the puzzle of how to sing with the larynx in a different posture. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the best mentality to go at this too is it's kind of like if you were to go to the gym to work out a muscle, right? Not I'm not talking about the feeling of lifting weights. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the idea of we need to strengthen a muscle. Most people who have never gone to the gym on day one cannot expect to lift 500 pounds. You know what I mean? Oh
Right.
yeah, like on day one, no,
That's right.
you start with 5 pounds and you
That's
go
right.
at it again every day and you grow to 10 pounds and then you
That's right.
15, then you 20. And this is the type of work. It's frustrating. It needs a lot of patience, a lot of discipline,
That's right.
and it's everyday type of thing until the coordination starts to be applied, and the strength is built so that you can then be able to do it automatically without having to think. But at the
But
beginning, you're gonna have to be very aware, have that mind body connection, what is happening. And it's not gonna be, oh, okay, got it, ready to go. No, no, no. It's gonna take
no,
it's
no.
just like
And
it
and
does. Yeah.
as you grow in your ability to harness the breath, your volume will increase gradually, right? But your
Yeah.
idea has to be that you serve the resonance,
Hmm.
you serve the squeak of the voice, right? If you start increasing volume and go, and you start
Yeah.
pushing air past the chord, you're done.
Yeah.
You've destroyed your technique. The
Hmm.
whole point is to increase volume on the efficiency.
Yeah.
So that requires a certain coordinated strength in the
Yeah.
way that the chords
Yeah.
close rhythmically. Yeah. Even when you're singing gently, like a high note has a lot of strength in, like, almost like a falsetto feeling inside the vocal fold, in the muscle, but the actual closure is not weak at all. It's very strong.
Yeah.
And so while the actual mass of the chords that you're closing is actually not too muscular, the actual closure itself, opposing the breath, is very strong. And that gives you volume, right? A lot of people, you read YouTube comments and they think they know what somebody like Del Monaco or Corelli are doing, right? They think they know. They think. They don't know. They're like, oh, let me put more chest, right? And I always refer them to the great famous Del Monaco clip from Japan where he's singing Celestaida, a complete disaster, except for the high notes. It's like, Celestaida, for Maria, right? Everything is like thrown away. But then when he gets to the high note, it's and he holds it for like 10 seconds. It's like he couldn't hold an F, but he holds a B flat for 10 seconds.
Right. Well,
how do you hold a B flat for 10, 15 seconds if your vocal cords are total muscle? It's not going to happen.
Not gonna happen.
He could go to that lighter mechanism, even though we don't hear it as light. We hear it as powerful. And rightly so. Light mechanism is very powerful. How do you think Corelli does on television? Because the vocal cords are not rigid. They're not like nerves of steel inside the cords, making them rigid and causing muscle against muscle to press. No, it's thin edge, but thin edge that is so strongly adducted, fine-tuned in the adduction that it can resist significant pressure to make loud sounds. It's not by adding more and more and more muscle. That's crazy talk, and that leads to damage to the cords.
And I think that a lot of that comes because we're sometimes programmed to think that way, in which, like, if I want to generate more power, then I'm gonna give more strength, right? If I want to hit harder, I want to give more strength. While singing is the opposite. The more powerful a sound, the more resonant sound is, the more relaxed, the more light it is. I sometimes compare it to like a golf swinger swing or like a tennis serve, in which they never use, from my understanding, I'm not a professional golfer or tennis player, but they never use strength to hit it. It's this elasticity, almost like a whip.
That's right. Yeah. The strength has to be in the adduction, but actually inside the vocal fold, it's not rigid.
Right. Exactly.
So if the vocalis is hyperactivated, you'll have muscle against muscle in the vibration. The thickness of the cord will be much more. You need more pressure to make the phonation happen. The pressure threshold for the sound is much greater when the cord is thick. When the cord is thinner, you need less pressure. But if the cord stays adducted well, then that thin sound can take on a lot of power, right? And that's what you hear in all the great singers. They're like, "Huh?" If they speak on that sound, if they go, "Oh my goodness, it's very thin. What's going on with that sound?"
It's always a sound that
Right. But that's not what people hear. People hear, "Ah!" They hear the sound being powerful because it is. It's very loud. But behind the sound is this.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very thin mechanism in the cord.
There's my introduction to the tenor voice was all about buoyancy, elasticity, flexibility, like a trampoline. And honestly, it kind of applies to everything, not just the feeling of stretching and thinning the chords as we ascend, but even in support. I never feel rigidity, as in like, which a lot of people kind of teach this push out, push, flex. For me, it's always, and I think actually one of you talk about it in your video, in which support itself doesn't have to do, in order to fix the sound, it's not so much about fixing the support. It's the other way around. It's fix the sound and you'll fix the support. The sound needs to be healthy, right? But for me, it's very natural, this feeling of hey, 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 hey.
Right.
here that the body naturally supports whenever we
Right.
release a pressurized amount of air, such as when we sneeze or when we cough. The body naturally supports it. It's not like we opera singers go to the gym and work out our abs every day to
No,
be.
no.
The body can naturally support a
Right.
well protected sound, but obviously it won't support a sound if it's stuck.
No, right. Right. Right.
It needs
Right.
everything in the
So,
body.
Fisichella, he'll say to you, non c'è dentro e fuori, c'è solo su e giù. There's no in and out. There's only up and down with regard to breathing, right? It's absolutely right. That does not mean that there is no out.
Mhm.
It's not what you're doing. That's happening, right? What you're doing is down and up. So down is your diaphragm descending, and up are the lower abs that are coming up against the diaphragm,
Mhm.
right? So, and the result is thoracic expansion, rib cage expansion,
Mhm.
everything from basically here up
Like a
opens up.
barrel.
Right. But what the feeling of the singer is that you went to the deepest place for your diaphragm,
Mhm.
right? One time at a master class, actually a competition, Joan Sutherland, she gets asked, how do you breathe? And she said, darling, I breathe the lowest possible way.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
everybody's like, she breathes high. She breathes high.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
that for the singer is the deepest breath.
Yeah.
Because if your thorax is opening, that means that your diaphragm went further down.
Yeah.
And so the people that say, "Oh, the deepest breath is when your stomach goes down and out," that's nonsense. It's not even scientific.
Yeah.
Your stomach can go out, and then if you open your rib cage, you can take in like another 1/3 of breath, right?
Right.
What does that mean? It means your diaphragm went further.
Yeah.
So actually, the deepest diaphragm is when the rib cage opens up as
Yeah.
well. So in the tradition is lower abs up, diaphragm down. It's done in phases. So the first phase, you just drop, you just let the diaphragm go down. And then the second phase of the inhale is the lower abs coming up against the descending diaphragm. So the first phase is like the diaphragm's going down.
Mm.
And then at the tail end of the inhale, the lower abs come up, and while the diaphragm goes and meets them, and that sets you up for the singing. That's all. Then after you do that, it's the voice commanding everything.
Mhm.
You've done your work to create the elasticity and the tension between lower abs and diaphragm. They are ready to go. And now it's the voice that will direct how much air.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you manually kind of fine tune how much air should I push out, how much air should I withhold, you're never going to get it right,
Right.
because it depends on volume, it depends on what pitch you're on, right?
Yeah.
There'll be different requirements of airstream. So
Mhm.
the only way to really get it right is to follow the sound, follow the resonance. The resonance will be right, the airstream will be right. And so you're building volume and resonance over time, and your body is learning what is required, right? So
Mhm.
this is a fine tuning of support that happens over time. You learn how to do it through practice.
Yeah. And what
Um,
Jack's talking about is what I like to call the belly tuck, which I know the belly tuck is a superficial terminology, but it really is. It's this idea of sort of as the diaphragm lowers, I feel re-engagement of the lower abdominals here, as right as we're about to sing.
right.
Uh, uh,
Of course.
you don't
And,
do
and
the belly tuck.
and the
Or
consequence is this.
yeah.
As this comes up, if your diaphragm goes up, then you go, everything comes into the thorax,
Yeah.
right? Instead, the diaphragm should stay down against the lower abs. So you have this battle between diaphragm descending and the lower abs coming up.
Yeah.
And the result is ah, ah,
Mm.
ah, 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 ah,
Yeah.
ah, ah. It's out. But you don't think out.
No.
It goes out by itself.
Right.
You're
Right.
thinking up and down, diaphragm
Mm.
against lower abs, and stay there like an elastic.
Yeah.
And then all that other stuff that's happening happens on its own in consequence of the voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, moving on to the next question. Jack, by the way, tell me if you need to go, because I know that we've already been at it for a while. The next question is, what are some exercises to work on tongue and jaw relaxation? And most
Right.
importantly, larynx control, even though we kind of talked already about the larynx. But let's, I guess, focus more on the tongue and the jaw relaxation, which is
Right.
so important.
So this is huge, right?
Yeah, very huge. Yeah.
Most vocal problems, like, okay, you have a vocal problem with looseness, right? You're dull, or your passaggio, your air is moving out and stuff like that. Don't try to fix that right away by thinking of cord closure, because
Yeah.
your cord closure might not be the problem.
Mhm.
Go here, and if you feel, oh, and this is going down, that's your problem. Because when your tongue goes down toward the larynx, I have found that it almost always causes an abduction in the cords. Like if I'm going, oh, see how the sound
More
got
like a
dull?
depression. A
Right,
depression.
right.
Yeah.
It's like it causes the sound suddenly to get dull. What am I going to do if I hear that dull sound? I'm going to muscle the cords to try to get that ring back. The
Mhm.
muscling in the cords are going to make them thicker, which is going to increase the pressure threshold for phonation, which means I'm going to push more air. Then I'm going to feel like my support's off, so I'm going to focus on my support. So now I have problems with my support, problems with muscling, problems with sound,
Mhm.
tension with my tongue.
Mhm.
The real problem is not the support. The real problem is not the muscling. The problem is not the cord closure that loosened. The problem was the tongue. The top of the chain caused the problem.
The
So
domino. Right.
that's the domino effect.
Yeah.
This is, I've learned this over time. At the beginning, when I started teaching, I would hear problems. I'm like, you have a problem with cord closure. Let's work on that.
Mhm.
But over time, I've learned to discern more and more the genesis of problems. And what I find is that almost 90% of vocal problems stem from the tongue, the lowering of the tongue to try to control.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things in the whole mechanism of what we do that we can actually feel some type of control with.
Mhm.
And so we use the tongue to try to gain some kind of leverage or control, especially like with high notes. We kind of, to try to stabilize
Yeah.
somehow the larynx. It's all wrong.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I do with people, I tell them, sing a note and then go,
That's
right?
good. That idea.
Up
Yeah.
and down. And monitor your larynx to make sure that it's not moving with your tongue. And so all of a sudden they start to feel the independence between tongue posture and laryngeal posture, right? This is
Yeah.
important. It's
Very.
important for people to discover that they're not the same thing, because the brain wants to make one mishmash of everything.
Yeah.
So getting that, rolling the R. This is something I had to learn. I'm
Yeah.
Sicilian. We don't roll R's. We go z, 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 z. We don't roll R's. I had to learn how to roll R's, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that I do spontaneously. So I had to learn that skill to go. If you roll an R, you cannot stiffen the tongue root, right? Because if you do it, go.
Yeah.
It's stiffen. So it's one way to kind of loosen up the tongue and get it
Yeah.
out of the way.
Am I correct in saying that the root of the tongue is in one way or another attached to the larynx, the root of the
Sure.
tongue?
Yeah, so
So a
it's
lot.
attached to the hyoid, and the hyoid is
Yeah.
connected to the larynx. But you have to soften that region.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to go into. I was going to say that a lot of the problems happen is that when we do start to lower the larynx, what happens is a simultaneous movement. The tongue and falls back as
Yeah.
well.
Well, we
So
have to think the opposite. We
right.
have to think larynx down, tongue up, like
Yeah.
this.
Like an eval, say, like when we say an
Like
eval,
an
tongue
eval. Like an
right,
eval.
the back of the
Exactly.
tongue. The front is
Yes.
still very like
Exactly.
dead, relaxed.
I like to think of the vowels as formed by the tongue in the mouth, right? This is more Italianate. Like, for example, we would say Come va? Bene, grazie. We never say come va? Bene, grazie. Oh, is I don't know how many people they say, oh, you want to tilt or sing more round. Please go AWE. Oh. What are you doing? You're putting your tongue in your throat. Oh, this is not a way to sing. Oh, you think your tongue flexibly out of the throat, almost like you're saying the vowels in the tongue's posture in the mouth. I oh, not oh, 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 oh. Even a closed oh, you can go oh, eh. This is not oh. Linguistic differences make a big problem. Like Anglo-Saxon language, there's a lot of You see these MRIs of people, their tongue moving for the different vowels. They're not singers. They're just people speaking. We don't do that when we're singing correctly. We don't have the tongue going up and down like you see in these MRIs. We have to try to keep the tongue more like in an A shape, up, and then inside the mouth we make the movements, not in the throat. Does that make sense? We cannot lower this, especially for high notes. We have to find almost like the falsetto position. That requires the tongue to be in a much higher place. Yeah? Make sense?
Yeah. And how do you view, sorry, this is kind of one of my questions. How do you view the falsetto as a development tool for a singer, especially a singer who perhaps as they ascend find tension and rigidity and like a ceiling in their voice? Do you use falsetto as a development tool?
Yeah, I do. And because the falsetto in and of itself, you can find the skill of releasing the muscularity in the chords. So, for example, if I'm doing I'm letting go of muscle to get to the falsetto, right? I'm not going to quite go that far in the full voice, but I am definitely going in that direction. So if I'm going I'm trying to go like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the falsetto can serve you as a tool to soften the chord. And I don't particularly use the falsetto per se, because falsetto really is that's falsetto, right? There's what Italians call voce finta, which is a closed chord falsetto. More il tenore da lontano, the tenor from far away, right? This is it sounds like a full spectrum of resonance. But it's a way for you to learn how to keep your chords closed while not engaging muscle.
Yeah, sort of a reinforced falsetto, I guess is what.
Yeah, in a sense. But that's not what you do when you're singing full.
No, right.
It's a way for you kind of to condition the release of the musculature inside the chord.
Yeah. And I find that a really well done reinforced falsetto and then engaging the full voice, especially as you ascend, is very close, like in terms of feeling and sensation of the pressure of the voice.
Absolutely.
Like it's not like that's like two completely different. If to engage the voice, it's very quite clear. So a lot of people overdo it. Like they can give me a beautiful falsetto sound, reinforced falsetto sound, and all they have to do to get to the full voice is not much. It's not much, It's just a little bit more chord closure and to engage the chest sound, the very thin chest sound. But I think that they overdo it too much and they start to bring weight after the voice. It's very close to that.
If the thickness in the chord remains like the middle or like the passaggio, this is wrong. You need to think this way. Like if you're going, like if you're doing, right? If I'm doing this note, those are the three hardest notes. Then passaggio is a little lighter. And then here,
Yeah.
The
You're right.
top note is the lightest one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not what people hear.
No.
They hear the voice opening and getting louder as you go up, but you're feeling like you're lightening.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
lightening does not mean less voice, it means less muscle inside the body of the chord,
Yeah.
right where you go,
Yeah.
right inside the chord. It gets soft.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, yeah. It's
Right.
just it's
So,
that, if you were, I mean, that's why I like a lot of these siren exercises that allow
yeah,
you to stretch and go into, if you go to falsetto, is fine. But the idea is for you to understand that you can thin the sound and ascend without any heft. And if you were to
right,
slow it down, it would sound something like ah,
right, right. Exactly. Right,
Mickey
right.
Mousey. Hello.
Yeah, exactly. Totally, totally. What
Uh,
one way you can think this way, like if you're doing you're letting go of mass,
yeah.
right? It's the same idea.
Yeah.
It's on the side of a falsetto
Yeah.
for the singer that's doing it,
Yeah.
not for the person that's hearing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
hear more mass, more energy. We feel less. This is the contradiction. People think they know what they're hearing, right? And so they think they need to carry. They hear a tenor, they think they need to carry the middle or the passaggio to the very top,
Yeah.
right?
But
It's not. A natural is the first high note. A flat, G flat, that's passaggio.
gotcha.
They're not the same,
Right.
right? They're not the same. If I do it, this is the hard note. This is super easy.
Mm.
And these are not the same as this.
Yeah.
This is lighter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
super light. This is a little bit, but this one, that's much more.
Yeah. Much more. Yeah. It needs.
Much
Yeah.
more muscle
And that's
compared to the
that.
top.
And you talk a lot about this tenor cry and this idea of this sob, this and I also like to
Right.
include a lot of a yodeling and even crack into the sound.
Right.
If
Yes, absolutely.
raising this,
Absolutely.
allowing the larynx to crack if it needs to crack, because it's allowing, honestly, for me, the vocal crack is the body literally telling you that the larynx is tense in some way, like, and
Uh-huh.
so allowing it to go wherever it needs to go and be very, very
Exactly. But that's it.
because you ascend and
That's
ascend
exactly, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. The
higher.
correct high note is like if you have a railroad track,
Yeah,
this side is the correct high note, this side is yodel.
yeah, 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 right. It's so close. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
right there. It's like
yeah,
right on both sides of the track. It's either or
yeah,
it's
yeah,
but it's right there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
And so
but over time you learn to not crack.
yeah,
It just stays and it becomes more and more solid and you hardly ever crack.
yeah,
But it's so light that it could crack. You
it
just
could
need to
crack.
like go, and it would crack.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's what we do. I mean, it is a risky thing because any high note has risk, because we're going to a place where it's a very thin connection where it could crack if we wanted, And so I dare people out there, who are trying to improve, crack, because we
Right.
have not spontaneous, but this instinct to immediately want to avoid it and do everything we can to avoid this hideous sound. But I
Right.
would say that if you allow yourself to crack and make these ugly sounds, you will find such a relief. And you could do it for hours. It will never make you hoarse or tired. You could
No. Quite the opposite. Right. Right.
yodel into everything,
Yeah.
and then
It's the
you learn
same.
to reset the larynx too.
It's the same principle for ladies. Like
Yeah,
if ladies are going in their chest range and they're going right in
yeah,
that crucial area, if they're they have to
yeah,
be able to switch
yeah,
by maintaining the chord closure. It's the same principle.
yeah,
There's a reduction in mass, but they need to be able to keep the chord closure so that that thread of silver keeps going from one
yeah,
place to the other.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Again, guy, let me know. Let me know, Jack, if you need to leave. We're gonna go through these. Try to like speedball it here. I mean, you guys, there's so many good questions. Even I'm starting to lose count. Okay, can you explain when to use chest voice and when to use head voice?
For tenor,
Yeah,
there's never head voice.
yeah, yeah,
It's always chest voice, but
yeah,
it's modified.
yeah,
Head voice would be like if you're doing
yeah,
that would be a head voice. We
yeah,
never do that. But we have head voice components,
yeah.
right? The tilt is more head voice.
Hmm.
So for a tenor, we kind of keep a little bit of tilt throughout the whole range,
Yeah.
but it starts to become more and more dominant around B natural C,
Hmm.
right? And then as we approach F, it becomes more and more dominant. The voice
Yeah.
ends up turning,
Yeah.
right? For a baritone, like around A flat. For a bass, like around F.
Hmm.
So depending on same principle with ladies as they go from the chest voice toward an F sharp, uh, F4, F sharp 4, they need to be able to tilt more and more so that then their mix comes in. It's the
Yeah.
same principles across the board.
Yeah.
The head voice is more tilt.
Hmm.
It's longer vocal fold.
Yeah.
That's what head voice is.
Yeah.
So we always sing with a little bit of mass. Even ladies sing with a little bit of mass inside their chord because we need to keep the chord straight.
Yeah.
If we let go completely of chest, the chords will bow under the pressure, right? They need to have a little bit, and then the edges kind of catch, but the chords has to stay straight. So there's always a little bit of mass that needs to be there, just not so much that its chord
Yeah.
bulks up, and then we have muscle against muscle all the time.
All right. You need components both throughout your entire
You
range.
need both, but in a tenor voice, it becomes more dominant around
Yeah.
C. B natural C is
Which is
where the tilt becomes
the
more
tilt.
dominant.
Yeah. Because
In fact,
if you
the
have two.
first time I went to Busseto to work with Bergonzi, I
Uh-huh.
was utterly confused because we were working on Anche Beppamo from Amico Fritz.
Yeah.
And I go, Ed Anche Beppamo. And he was, oh, bene, hai girato bene. I turned well. I'm like, what's he talking about? That's
Yeah.
not turned.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Not
that's
oh,
open.
technically,
That's open. I thought because
yeah.
I was thinking cover was like oh that
Right.
was cover right, and
Yeah.
I was going oh which was open, not in his language and
No.
not in Fisichella's language.
Yeah.
They
Right.
talk about
See that.
aperto coperto, an
Yeah. Yeah.
open cover.
Yeah.
So when your voice tilts, like if you're going so that process of tilting for them is turned,
Yeah. Yeah. That's very
not
good to know.
covered, turned,
Yeah.
which means that the voice is going into a higher
Yeah. Hi.
place because of the
Yeah.
tilt.
Yeah.
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 Not that you're placing it, it's going there because of the tilt. So
Yeah.
that process of increasing tilt is considered like if you were covering or turning. So in that sense, in that school of thought,
Yeah.
you turning much lower, like at a C for a tenor. It's
Exactly.
not covering the way that we would consider
Yeah.
like when we
But
listen to Pavarotti, right?
yeah, it totally makes sense because even if you weren't able to do that, you would hear that in the sound. Like I don't have a piano with me, but if you were to play middle C or A to C,
Yeah.
and you have a ah, there's no turn. There's no
Right.
sort of the head voice.
There's no tilt. Right.
Find a little bit more of
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah.
Yawning, that stretching of the third needs it
Right.
up there.
Right.
Technically,
What you're objectively what you're doing is you're lengthening the chord.
yeah,
That's what you're doing. The tilt
that's
is
right.
lengthening the chord, and
Yeah,
so the chord's getting thinner. The
yeah,
acoustics are shifting because of that, and the voice feels like it's more vertical and more up, like
yeah,
it would in a falsetto. Hence, we call it head voice because in reality, that's what dominates in the like if you're feeling. Right, in a female voice, they have that as a dominant function. They're not
yeah,
going ah, right. That
yeah,
would be like a rock star,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Exactly. Right.
They're going more, so it's
Yeah,
much more head dominant.
yeah,
We have that function. It's just embedded with a whole bunch of chest,
yeah,
and so it's a mixture of elements in a
yeah,
sense. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Jack, we suck at answering these questions quickly.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
uh,
that's very true.
All right. The next one. When I get to the top notes, I lose the spinning slash squealo effects in my voice at times. Why is
Yeah.
that?
Well, there can be various factors.
Yeah.
People can push more air when they're
Right.
going up because the brain's like, oh, you have to push more air in order to achieve the high note. That's one possibility.
Yeah.
Another possibility is that they are lightening to the extent of like trying to go toward a falsetto. And
Yeah.
so the brain is interpreting that as a loosening in the cord. And
Yeah.
so then there's more air consequently coming out. Another factor could be that the larynx is might be going up, might be going down, who knows, but it's definitely not with an
Right.
epiglottic lowering.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
I can have a like a lowering of the epiglottis. If I go up,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a difference in resonance when the epiglottis is up or down.
Yeah.
So that could also be like the inability to lower the epiglottis. You need to think, that's all.
Yeah.
To lower the
Yeah.
epiglottis, just go, and that right, and that helps to
Uh,
if you do that on a high note,
uh,
ah,
uh,
it kind of gets you to a
yeah.
better ring,
Yeah.
right? That's one fact. Who knows? It's
Mm,
to be seen why.
yeah.
What is the likelihood? The likelihood is that the tongue is going down, and so the chords are going like this on the
Mm,
high note.
yeah.
That's
Right.
what I find most.
Most of the
So
time.
to the guy that wrote that question, check here. If this is going down when you go to your high note, that's your answer. Your
Yeah.
tongue is going down. You need to think more like an eh
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the high note.
And you know, Jack, I actually this I wanted to make a video about this, and I kind of now that I have you, I can kind of get your verification on this. But it's kind of very superficial way of thinking. But do you know the characters? Do you know the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants?
I sure do.
Okay, so
I
for
have
me,
daughters.
okay, there you go.
SpongeBob.
So for me, I find it because all these cartoon voices is they're all funny, but in a way, there's a certain trajectory, there's certain truth to these cartoon voices that can take us to a very
My
interesting.
students know all about SpongeBob SquarePants. I
Do you
talk about
if
them
you
all the
teach this,
totally,
if you teach this,
totally.
I'm gonna freak out. I find that SpongeBob and Patrick are literally the epitomes of chiaro no scuro. In other words, like you have SpongeBob. All right, I'm gonna make a video about this. Now that I have your, it's gonna be Jack Livigni verified, guys. All right, I'll talk about it. Jack, you can then take it away. For me, SpongeBob has always been an incredibly open sound. Okay, but the vowels are clear and the chord closure is great. The larynx is high, sure,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you allow yourself to keep the larynx high but loose, and allow yourself to kind of talk like SpongeBob, you're gonna have
Right,
a lot of great chord closure, a lot
right.
of clear, pointy, squillante sound. Right now, it's not correct. It's one extreme.
It's
Okay,
it, it's a side of it's a component.
yeah, it's a
It's a
component. It's
component.
when we're talking about the beginning of this video, taking the sound and literally breaking into components. This
Right.
SpongeBobby sound, this wide open high larynx but clear chord closure sound is one component. Then you have the other extreme, Patrick, which is very much the yawn.
Right.
With a lot of, but the chords are very loose.
Right.
There's all is very breathy. But hey, the larynx is low, the palate is lifted. There's depth in the sound. So if you understand these two extremes, being able to find a balance. For me, it was kind of, as tenors, we always need SpongeBob in the sound, and it's singing SpongeBob through Patrick. So is that ah
Right.
ah
Right.
ah
That's
oh,
right. That's right.
oh, ah, and finding how we can not lose the presence of the sound that this SpongeBob has.
Absolutely right.
Pun
The
intended.
reason why I use SpongeBob sometimes is exactly what you demonstrated, but a different aspect. You did so you're actually vibrating,
Uh huh.
right? Not
Vibrate. Oh, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
fact, right? That
yeah, yeah,
upward vibrato, we hear that
yeah.
a lot in Broadway singers, like the
Right.
that kind of
Yeah,
wah.
yeah,
Opera
yeah,
singers, for some reason, they think they need to vibrate down.
Yeah.
Ah,
There it comes
right?
with a lot of depression
You
problems too.
listen to Bierling, you listen to
Yeah.
Gedda, you listen to these people that had light mechanisms like to burn, they all vibrate up.
Mhm.
Ah, that
Yeah.
lightens the voice because the
Yeah.
vibrato is more tilt, less tilt, more tilt, less tilt, up pitch, down pitch, up pitch,
Yeah.
down pitch. Ah, right. So if your intentionality is to vibrate up like SpongeBob,
Yeah.
you're actually emphasizing the lengthening, which is a lightening. Because when you lengthen, you stretch and you thin out the cord. So if your intentionality is to lengthen while you vibrate, you're actually fostering a lighter mechanism as you hold the note. If you're vibrating down, uh, as you hold the note, you'll get thicker,
Mhm.
heavier. And so some people like they're holding a high note and then at the end it goes down the toilet. Why?
Yeah.
Perché? Right? It's because as they're vibrating, they're increasing tension by adding a little bit more thickness to the
Mm.
right. So we have to vibrate up. We have to vibrate up. If you take a clip of Scotto, Callas, all these people, or Bierling, and you slow it down, you'll hear ah. You'll never hear ah. It's always up.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. These are little things that I geeked out that I did experimenting and trying to figure things out for myself. And
Yeah.
I discovered how the people they vibrate up, and for them it's natural. It's a sense of lightness. È un
Yeah.
vibrato leggero. It's more on the breath. Ah,
Mhm.
ah, right. There's a sense
Yes.
of release in the
Yes.
musculature
Yeah.
that suspends the larynx. Right.
Yeah.
It's important because we tend to put more weight as we go higher.
Yeah.
And I think the SpongeBob thing of going,
I
that
love
is
it
like
because you can
really,
take it all the way up and it doesn't cost you anything. You know, you go it doesn't cost
it's
you
very
anything.
interesting. It's very
You're
interesting.
able
I
to
mean,
find, yeah.
it's interesting how you're able to shed the weight
Yeah.
by relinquishing musculature in the cord, and you go clearly into a higher range without any break.
Right.
So that's very good. Bravo to you.
Jack, would you be my voice teacher?
No, you don't need a voice. You are your voice teacher. I'm just air traffic control.
Oh my god. I don't want to. I mean, guys. God, I really wish I could keep going because there's just so many questions, and I feel bad. First of all, thank you all you guys for tuning in. I mean, there's just an enormous amount of support. Having Jack is really a big deal. I think for me for sure because I've been a huge fan of yours, Jack, for the longest time. By the way, I did not mean to steal Tenor Talk from you. Okay, I
No,
promise.
I'm happy. I mean, Tenor
I
Talk.
promise.
We did Tenor Talk a long time ago. I don't even know where it is anymore because all that was lost in
I
some kind of
promise you.
word
Wait,
pressing. But
I
I'm
want to.
happy you picked up that torch. This is great. I think this is what we need to have this kind of
Yeah.
conversation.
I've always said the same thing, but I want to be clear. I actually didn't know. I read up on your blog long time ago. I didn't know what the name was, and this is where actually I learned. I heard Andrew Owens for the first time. He was singing Mario Lanza stuff, and I saw your name, Jack Livigni, at the end, but I didn't know who it was. It wasn't until I saw you on YouTube. But what started for me that the name of Tenor Talk was that we had an Instagram group with me, we had Jonathan Tettleman and Matthew White, and all we did was just go geek out on tenor stuff, and we called it Tenor Talk, you know. And so when I started this channel, which again happened by just complete accident, a happy accident, I named it Tenor Talk because of that group. Okay, which just so happens that I realized that your blog was also called Tenor Talk. So I was like, please don't sue me. But no, that's fantastic.
I have a copyright. No.
Jack, oh my God. Thank you so much again. I know I've said
Yeah,
that.
my pleasure.
If you would be up for it, and if the people would love it, I would love to have you back on board. Maybe what we could do is get together physically, and you can give me a lesson, and we could geek out on all the tenor stuff. You know what I mean? You can use me as a demonstration, and we could just kind of you know do things, demonstrate. Maybe you can
That'd be
fix all
fun.
my issues that I have.
Well,
and
clearly you don't have issues because you're singing everywhere and doing great things. So that's
oh
that's
no,
great.
You always have issues. There's always things to learn. There's always things to learn. I always say we're always
That
students.
is true. Always.
But it would be a huge pleasure. We should definitely arrange it if you're up for it. And I think that we could do a live and people can ask, people can see it. I like to be very open with this kind of stuff because technique has been such a taboo subject for some reason. Like people don't like to talk about it, or they get offended when if you disagree with them. And I'm like, all right, if you get offended because of technique, then you're petty. I mean, come on. There's people who disagree with me all the time, and every time I say something, and I'll say it again for this video, these are my experiences, my
Sure.
methodology. This is also Jack's own knowledge and his experiences, what he's learned through
Right.
his. If you don't agree with it, if it doesn't work for you, then that's fine. You're not going to offend any of us.
No, no. In fact,
And
I
yeah,
I personally I know, for example, when I work with a lot of famous singers, I don't claim them they're my students. I
right.
work with them, I help them, but guess what? They've had plenty of teachers in the past. I'm not going to then come out and say, "Oh, this person studies with me," right?
Mm,
And people claim things because it's useful. It's the same thing with technique.
mm,
People claim things, yes, because there are dollar signs attached to coaching, to teaching, and stuff like that, right? And we know that. But there is a business side, obviously, to voice
mm,
teaching or to singing or to coaching. But the reality is that a teacher is a guide, a servant, not a master to be
yeah,
served, right?
100%.
And you're a servant too as a singer. You serve the art. You need to. You're a servant of the audience. You're there to help them experience what it needs to be experienced with this art form, right?
Yeah,
So you're a servant as well, a
yeah,
servant of the audience. I'm a
yeah,
server of the singing of the singer. I
mhm,
help them, guide them, and so forth and so on. But there's no ownership. I
yeah,
mean, I didn't pay for a voice lesson for almost 8 years of my life in Italy. I used to
mm,
go to Pola, Bergonzi. Not one
yeah,
of them asked me to pay for a lesson.
yeah,
Does that mean I should? This is my job, and so I have people pay. That's how it works,
yeah,
and that's what it is. But I'm cognizant of the fact that this is not just a business. There's more to this,
mhm,
and the sharing of information like this kind of stuff. Some people are like, "What's wrong with you? Why don't you? Why are you doing this? You're selling your things short, or that's
uh,
not it." I do videos and stuff like that because first of all, I'm always like, oh my gosh, are people gonna like ruin themselves by listening to a video? I
yeah,
have no idea, because you
yeah,
never know how people can interpret what you say.
yeah.
They
You're right.
might they might go completely wrong,
Yeah.
and
Oh.
you know, so I'm always kind of like about this kind of stuff. But it's
Well,
useful. You share,
but
and
let me tell you.
hopefully it helps. If it can help somebody, fine. And there's going to be people that disagree, and they're going to think, oh, Del Monaco and Malocchi. My dad studied with Malocchi. I know all about Malocchi. People don't understand Malocchi. They think they do,
Yes. Yes.
but it's just to say that there are so many opinions. But in the end, it's not if we offend others because
Yeah.
we're territorial about our stuff, that's not helpful. That's not even really nice.
No.
And
Right.
in my personal life, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. Sometimes you mention me like to say I'm no savior. There's one savior up in heaven, right? And that's the truth. And I try to live my life just trying to be a good person whenever I'm faced with a choice. This is one of the many choices. We
Mm,
can help each other. We don't have to be offended. We don't have to contend. We don't have to get territorial about technique. We're
mm,
trying to help each other understand. And if I can help somebody with the technique, I'm happy
yeah.
when I'm able to. But guess what? A lot of times I fail at helping people. I try the best I can. But
Mm.
depending on where people are, the instructions that I give might not work out the best, as I would like.
But
Because
yeah.
I'm not a magician.
Right.
I
Right.
do my best, and I know people are doing their best that they can. Even when they're not able to do things, they're doing their best.
Yeah.
And so I'm always really patient and compassionate towards singers because I know that
Yeah.
they're sacrificing so much for their art and they are trying to be successful. They just need to be focused.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of frustration. Don't
Yeah.
shy away from frustration. Yeah.
Yeah, and to jump on what you said, well, first of all, from someone who's been in the receiving end of your videos, a lot of my technical foundation up to now is thanks to all the things that you've done. So don't ever think next time you post a video, oh, what if I mess someone up? Absolutely not. You're definitely helping more people than you are in a negative way. And number two is, um, funny thing that you mentioned when you said that you feel like sometimes you can't help someone. There has been times where I've taken a lesson with a teacher who at the time I didn't understand what they were saying, and they weren't able to help me. I couldn't quite grasp what they were saying. I tried what they did, it didn't click. And it wasn't until many years later where perhaps I was in a different point of view in my voice, in a different God, what's the word I'm looking for? In a different
Different phase of development,
in a
right?
different development, yeah, in a different point of development in my voice, that then I was like, oh, that's what that
Yeah.
teacher said 2 3 years ago.
Right.
Ah, so it's all we can do, like you said, is we're guides, and a lot of the work has to be
Right.
done by the singer themselves. All we can do
Right.
is, as a doctor would do, as a diagnosis, a checkup.
Right.
And sometimes we get lucky enough that we use a certain terminology or a certain concept that boom clicks.
Yeah.
I
And have a pathway. A
yeah,
pathway to lead from A to B. Okay,
right.
you can develop this foundational skill by doing this. How
Hmm.
does that then amplify? How does that impact the rest of your singing?
Yeah,
It will impact it a lot. You just need to like develop the foundational skills one by one and figure out how they fit together in
yeah,
your singing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I
100.
gotta go because I actually
Yeah, yeah.
have
No. I
people
held you up
gonna
for
be.
almost 2 hours. I held you up, guys. I held
I
up
love
Jack
it.
Livigni for almost 2 hours for you guys. Next time
It
three.
was it was a pleasure,
Uh,
and thanks to everybody that tuned in. It's a pleasure.
an absolute pleasure to have you, Jack. Honestly, a great honor, and honestly, I'm just kind of fangirling here internally, geeking out. It's such an awesome session to have with you. We will definitely be in touch. Hopefully, we do get to. I would love to just have a session with you. Honestly,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
uh,
I'll let you know next time I'm in Europe.
yeah, or when I'm in the States. I mean,
There you go.
I'm coming to the States soon as well, so we'll definitely go.
Awesome.
We'll definitely meet each other. All right, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in, Jack. Have a lovely evening for you, I think, or afternoon over there.
Yep.
Uh, and thanks again. Wish you all the
My
best.
pleasure.
Hope to see you soon. All right,
All
Jackie.
right.
All
Bye.
right.
God bless everybody. Bye bye.
Let me figure out how to turn this thing off. All right. Bye, bye, everyone.
Bye
Ciao.
bye.